Hi, my name is Pat, and this is my channel, Book Chat with Pat, and I'm glad that you're here. Today I'm going to be doing my weekly wrap-up for the week ending January 11th. So I have a lot of things going on, a lot of group reads and different events that I'm participating in, so I'm kind of in the middle of a whole bunch of things, but I'll talk a little bit about each of those things here today. First of all, we finished reading George Bernard Shaw's Pygmalion, and this was a group read with Angelia at Read and Reread, and we've been reading. Well, the event is endless drama, and Angelia has selected two plays to be read each month for the duration of the year. So the first play for January, for the first 2 weeks of January, was Shaw's Pygmalion. So I think we're wrapping up our discussion of this in Angelia's Discord. But this is the story of Eliza Doolittle, who is working basically on the streets selling flowers when she encounters Professor Henry Higgins and Colonel Pickering, and realizes that they are experts in linguistics, and that they can teach her how to speak like a proper lady, and then she would be able to get a job in a flower shop instead of selling flowers on the street. The two men make a bet as to whether or not they will be able to have Eliza in presentable condition to be presented at a big social ball that is going to be taking place a little bit in the future, and so they undertake this task of changing her language so that she can be passed off as a lady. Much of our discussion has been about the ways in which this play really is about the British class structure and class distinctions, and we've talked a great deal about how the men treat Eliza as a project without fully recognizing her humanity, and what's going to happen to her once she is given, or the ability to speak perfect English. Then what happens to her? Where does she go after that? And many people are familiar with this story, perhaps from the musical My Fair Lady, which was made from this play, but this play is actually quite different from My Fair Lady, and deals much more with social class distinctions and social responsibilities for one another. I think we're wrapping up the discussion any day now. I think some people have actually moved on to the next play in January. So this was a great first read, I thought, for to kick off the event and to start with which to start the year. The Pineiro Project, where we're reading all of the works of Claudia Piñeiro that have been translated into English, has taken a gap week. So we are off this week, but starting on January 13th, we will be reading Elena Knows. This is the story really of a mother and daughter relationship. The daughter is found hanged at the beginning of the novel, and her death is immediately written off as a suicide. Her mother, Elena, does not believe for a minute that her daughter has committed suicide. And so this novel is very much about her efforts to find out what actually happened to her daughter. And it's a very short novel. It's less than 150 pages long, and the entire action of the novel takes place in the course of a day. So we're going to read this one rather quickly. We're going to read this over a week's time, not stretch it out as we have some of the earlier books. So I will be talking about this more on the channel next week as we we're going to read it in this coming week and then discuss it, as we read, and then into the following week. My in-person book group is meeting on Monday of this week. We're meeting on January 13th to discuss Louise Erdrich's newest novel, The Mighty Red. So I will talk more about this next week after my group has had a chance to get together on Monday to talk about it. I've also joined Greg at another bibliophile read. I've joined his group, which is reading In Search of Lost Time, Marcel Proust. The proposal is to read the entire book, In Search of Lost Time, over the course of the year. And this is, at least in the edition that I'm reading, this is a 6-volume series, a 6-volume novel. I have committed to reading volume 1, which is Swann's Way. And we're reading this during January and February. People are reading in small pieces, 10, 11, 15 pages a day. I'm about 150 pages into the novel at this point. The jury is still out as far as I'm concerned as to whether I will go on with the future volumes, but I'm definitely going to read. I will complete Swann's Way. Where I am so far, and at least I think the first half of this book, is basically the narrator's reflections on his childhood in a French town, Combray. What he's writing about, what he's talking about, are these what are sort of referred to as gusts or blasts of memory that arise, when he has certain sensations around him, and then that causes him to remember other things from his childhood. What I'm getting so far is that the beginning of this, anyway, is tracing the narrator's roots to the events that the childhood events, the childhood experiences that influenced him in becoming a writer. I think it's widely believed that this is a semi-autobiographical novel. I know that there is eventually going to be at least one love story in here, but I think even one that is about to happen in this volume. But so far, what I'm getting is that this is a series of sketches of the important people in the narrator's young life. We're looking at a pretty closed circle of the figures in his early life, in his intimate world, his family and close family friends. I believe that the narrative eventually moves outside beyond that just immediate family circle. More to come, at least for the duration of January and February. I'll be talking more about Swann's Way. I also started this week. I'm about halfway finished with Valeria Luiselli's Lost Children Archive. This is a novel that I am reading for Mariandrea's book club. This is the Books and Bocadillos book club, in which Mariandrea has picked out novels to be read throughout the year, all of which have been written by Latina writers. This novel, Lost Children Archive, was written in 2019, and it was inspired by the American policy of separating children from their parents at the U.S.-Mexican border. This novel describes a cross-country trip made by a family. The family is known basically as Mama and Papa and the boy and the girl. The girl is the mother's child and the boy is the father's child. The couple has married, so they're a bit of a blended family, and they're making a trip from New York City to Arizona. There are no names used for any of the characters. They're just referred to as the boy and the girl, and the mother and the father. The husband wants to go to Arizona for a project that he is working on the Apache. The mother becomes interested in making this trip because she wants to try to find two children who came over the border, who are the children of someone that she knows in New York, who has been separated from her children. So she wants to try to see what she can find out about these children. There's kind of a sense of foreboding throughout this trip. There's a real sense that this marriage is coming undone, that it's truly falling apart, and the father spends almost his entire time talking about his Apache project, and that's about all that he talks about to the children as well. He talks about Geronimo and the Apaches. The mother talks a great deal about lost children separated from their parents. Right where I am in the novel right now, something very dramatic happens with the two children, the children of this couple, and that's exactly where I am now. This whole novel is moving to I fear, a very, very dark place. This is certainly a very, very timely book about the immigration crisis. It's a compelling read, and yet as I'm reading, I'm also filled with this sense of dread. So while it's a quick read because the story is so compelling, I'm just finding it emotionally beyond challenging. I also talked last week about two events that I'm participating in because of my interest in becoming more well versed in classic science fiction. And so there are 2 year-long groups. Actually, there's a new schedule for this year, but one of these groups has been going on at least for the past year, maybe even before that. But Shawn D. Standfast has organized 2 different groups that are where the participants are reading different authors of classic science fiction. The one that I talked about last week is the Clifford D. Simak group, and I think this is the one that's been going on for at least a year, if not more, before this year. But the first reading for this year is a book I talked about last week, and that's The Goblin Reservation. But then I realized that this is the one that we're actually going to talk about later in the month, and the one that we're talking about sooner is for the other group, and that's the Robert A. Heinlein group. And for that, we're reading, the first book that we're reading is Red Planet. So I believe the discussion for this is going to take place next weekend. I know very little about Robert A. Heinlein. I read a few of his books in the summer for Rocket Summer, and I specifically read books from his Juveniles series. You know, that's what they called it when he was writing. They would be like YA books today. So this is really interesting. And that's all I know about Heinlein are his juvenile books, but I know that he's written many others that would not fit into that category. But Red Planet was written in 1949, and it was originally supposed to be part of the juvenile series, but Heinlein included some things that Scribner's, his then publisher, said, would never do in books for children, and so they were edited out. This edition that we're reading is the revised edition that was written or published after his death, and it restored all of the things that had been cut out by Scribner's to make this fitting for children. And this particular edition that I have, this trade paperback, this actually shows all of the edits made by Scribner's back in 1949. It shows all of the things that were cut out that have now been restored. So, one of the things in the novel that had been taken out but that has been put back in are a lot of references to guns and gun rights. And in fact, the 2 main characters, who are boys, they're teenage boys, they both have guns, and there's a whole lot in this book about the right to arms. So that had all been taken out when this was published as a young adult novel, but it's back in this volume. So this is the story of 2 young boys who are off at this academy on Mars. It's called the Lowell Academy, and the boys are Jim and Frank, and Jim has sort of a pet, but he doesn't consider it a pet, he considers it a friend. But this is some kind of a Martian creature, and he has named it Willis, and it's a creature that is like the size of, I don't know, a soccer ball. It's a furry ball, but it can unroll itself, and it has appendages that come out and whatnot. What is very special about this creature is that it can remember everything that it hears, and it can mimic it back perfectly. So this little pet or friend or creature ends up picking up a lot of information, a lot of stories, a lot of potential problems, and then repeats things, and that's kind of what the whole plot revolves around. Jim gets into trouble at school for a number of reasons, but the big issue is that he has this, what the headmaster calls a pet. And so Willis is taken away from him. But the headmaster is really, kind of out of his mind. He's crazy with his own authority. So he basically confiscates Willis and takes him away. And so Jim and Frank decide that they have to do something to get Willis back. And when they are reunited with Willis, Willis reveals some very disturbing things that he has picked up, that he has heard from the headmaster and the headmaster's associates. And that's really where the adventure begins, because now the boys feel like they are on a mission to save the colony that their parents live in, which is going to be under a very, very serious threat. So I will finish this book, over the next, probably this weekend, over the next few days. I think we're discussing it next Saturday. I will say this. It is alarming to read the gun, all the gun rights information. That's very jarring, to hear kids talking about their right to guns and their right to bear arms. So I don't know. The jury's still out for me too on Heinlein, but the descriptions of Mars and of getting around Mars and the natives to Mars are really fantastic, and really quite fascinating. And from what I understand, and again, I'm not speaking from knowledge or experience with Heinlein, but some of what is presented in this story in terms of the world building of life on Mars, a lot of that gets developed a lot more in his later and perhaps even his more well-known books. So we'll see where I'm going to go with this as well. I'm in the middle of a lot of things, and there are other things that I'm not even talking about in this video because they're things that I haven't been able to read this week. There's a lot going on. January is a very, very full month. I did several videos this week. I did a Poetry Thursday video on poetry of wisdom. I also did a poetry pop-up video on the theme of snow. I did a first ever book haul video. I did a video on all of the books that I received over the holidays. And I did another episode in my series on books that I loved to teach. And this time I talked about Sophocles and the Theban cycle. And I talked specifically about Oedipus, the king, and even more so about Antigone. Most of the discussion was focused on Antigone. So there's been a lot going on in terms of my reading and in terms of my videos. It's been a busy and productive week. So that's it for this week. As always, I thank you for watching. I hope that you're doing well. I'll speak with you again soon. Take care.